Black Patriarch.
Understand the nature of race, which is economics. If you build the first floor, is economic. Build your businesses and your industries. Control business and industry, and put that pulls in your money, and hold that money, and practice group economics with it. Arab and Asian money bounces 12 to 13 times what it leaves. Jewish money bounces 18 times. Black folk got to learn how to practice group economics. Black Americans spend every penny they get outside their own community.
And the last thing I do is get rid of a lot of our black leadership. Okay? All these black leaders in America now that head up our 2 or 3 major institutions keep talking about looking out for everybody but black folk. You tell them that day is over. Nobody's going to sell black folk anymore. The day of selling black folk over.
25 years ago, you would not have heard such things said so freely because they were not embraced so widely. The strong family was still the backbone of black America, and 3 out of 4 children had both parents at home. That is true no longer. Most black children are now growing up without their fathers. The result is a world turned upside down as children copy what they see and repeat what they learn. LaDawn said she didn't have a father in her home and doesn't think her children need one. She's not unusual. Half the black families today are headed only by a woman. Clorinda said she could make it on her own as a single parent. She has never been married and is raising her daughter without a man's help. She's not unusual. Today, nearly 60% of all black children are born out of wedlock. Timothy said his children are not his responsibility. He has left them to be supported by their mothers and welfare. He's not unusual either. For LaDawn and Clorinda and Timothy, and many more like them in cities all over America, the traditional family no longer exists. It has vanished, and something new is taking its place. Single women and the children they're rearing alone are the fastest growing part of the black population. What becomes of the black family in a world where the values are being turned upside down?
If the parent is 17 and 18, uneducated, unmotivated, fooling around, wandering around, what's the child going to learn? Who's to teach him? When you learn something, you was taught by your parents. It was reinforced by school and your neighbors, but it was taught by your parents. Well, if the parents don't know anything, how are they going to teach the children? So it's not racism that I'm fighting right now. It's the lack of motivation. You see, I'm not even talking about racism. Maybe later on we'll get back to that. But I think we are destroying ourselves.
Raise your hand if you're married. None of you are married. Raise your hand if you would like to be married to your baby's father. 1. The rest of you who don't plan to get married, why don't you plan to get married? I'd like to know that.
You already have your child to think about, and then a whole family to care for. You know, it's a lot of responsibility. And then you don't want the commitments.
I wouldn't want no man holding me down because I think I can make it as a single parent.
But don't you think you might need help in raising that baby from a man?
Not really. I didn't have a father. My father wasn't in the home, so, you know, it really, male figures are not substantially important in the family.
Only on 3, a Memphis man with 25 kids by 15 different mothers is at it again.
More women claim he fathered children and still is not paying child support.
Everybody tell me, like, what you doing talking to him? How you didn't know he had all these kids? Duh. I've been in school. I wouldn't act like that.
Paula Stewart says she now knows the father of her 2-year-old son is the father of many. Terry Turnage shows up in court in rags, but around Forest City he's known as the flashy club owner that drives fancy cars and goes by the name TYB.
Stands for take your.
And so
Maisha Davis found out about Turnage when she called the Forest City Child Support Office.
when I called, she was like, who? I said, Terry T. Turner. She said, oh, he's a famous.
More like infamous.
They told me my child made number 24.
So if yours is 24 and yours is 26?
Yeah, she told me mine was 26 when I came.
So she came
it's
up
one
with
in
the
between.
She
It's
came
one
up
in
with the
between
phone.
now. Yeah.
So he has 3 children that are 2 years old. The story of these 2 mothers mirrors those in Memphis WREG told you about in 2012. They say Turnage fathered their children and pays little or nothing to support them.
$1.26.
WREG tried to catch up with Turnage, but each time we went to the house where we were told he lives, no one answered.
We be trying to warn females, some females or other people, they be coming to us asking about them, but they don't listen. They don't listen at all.
So you guys went to the party at a club that he owns?
Yes, ma'am.
Why?
Just to have fun. Just have a good time.
It wasn't, you know,
it wasn't really
to see
nothing.
him.
No.
In Forest City, Arkansas, Stephanie Skurlock, WREG News Channel 3.
This happened in the 1960s. Before 1964, most black marriages were intact. Everything was fine. Right after 1964, when they passed the Civil Rights Act, they started to come into the community with all of these programs. They set the women aside. They started giving women grants and loans and housing and all of this stuff purposely to cause a rift in the black community. Separation. There's even a report called the Moynihan Report that came out in 1965 that predicted what would happen to the black community. It said in 20 years, the way we're going now, in 20 years, the black community will be in shambles. Teen pregnancy is going to be up. There's going to be rampant drug use. There's going to be crime if we keep on giving these women set-asides and not doing anything for the black male. They said this in 1965. Look up Moynihan Report. And everything in that report came true. And it's still coming true, and it's still reigning true now.
Because it was a plan. It wasn't an accident.
It was a plan. It was not an accident. So we have to realize that this rift that's going on, it was enacted. It was a real thing, and we have to get back to our original roles.
When you have a single-parent household, you have less money coming into the house than you would if you had 2 parents who were out working. When you have a single-parent household, you have less time to spend with the kids and to monitor the kids and to teach the kids than you do when you have a 2-parent household. Also, I believe that when you talk about raising children who are capable of maintaining relationships and families, kids from 2-parent households have dealt with opposite-sex parents who force them to learn the ins and outs and the difficulties of dealing with the opposite sex and making a family stay together. And a lot of young people have kind of lost that skill.
The whole welfare system is designed to replace the black man with the system as the black woman's husband. So the man ain't there, but the judge is your husband. The social worker is your husband. The man who gives out the welfare check, he's your husband. The man who gives you the Section 8 housing, he's your husband. So what they've done in America is they've created a situation where the black woman doesn't need the black man for nothing. Even if she wants your money, she doesn't have to ask you. She can go and have the white man dig in your pockets and take it for her. So you got this relationship between the black man and the black woman where if the sister is not careful, she can be manipulated into being used as a secret weapon of oppression against her own man. We are the only men whose women do not have to come and consult with us before they do anything else. This is a direct outgrowth of slavery, and it was engineered. That's why in America, black women make more money than black men. That's not true for no other group. Black women have more education than black men. That's not true for any other group. We're not faulting our sisters or knocking them in no way. And I want my sisters to understand that. We're just analyzing this system, this structure that's been created that empowers the sister, disempowers the man, and now convinces her that he's worthless and she don't need him and she'll be better off without him.
Fatherless children are more likely to join gangs and lead delinquent lives. A gang is a what, y'all? Surrogate family. Children want structure. You think they want to do whatever the hell they want? No! They want to be told what to do sometimes. And if you don't give them structure, they'll go find it in a gang. A gang ain't nothing but a replacement family because you ain't got one. Fatherless children are more likely to suffer emotional and mental illness. Children without fathers are more likely to experiment with homosexuality and lesbianism. Effects of fatherlessness on our daughters. Obviously, teenage pregnancy, right? Teenage pregnancy ain't got nothing to do with sex. It's emotional attachment issues. That's right. That's right. And why is teenage pregnancy so bad? First of all, if a black woman has a baby before she graduates high school, there's a 75% chance she'll be spending the rest of her life in poverty. That's number one, okay? 95% chance that she won't graduate on time, and a 99% chance that she'll never earn her master's degree, assuming that's what she wanted to work up to.
I saw the special that you were in on CNN with Anderson Cooper.
Yes.
And Pastor Flager.
Right.
And watching that, I couldn't help but to think about how we don't hold our communities accountable.
I think that's a fair criticism. This goes back to the breakdown of the African-American family. There was a time where in Brooklyn, New York, my block, if I messed up, every parent had the right to get me straight.
Right.
Now, grandmoms in the club.
Right.
Grandmother's 36 years old. The whole structure of the African-American family has been torn apart, and so there we see this is the result. I mean, a lot of these young people are parents of children of crack parents, and I'm not blaming anybody. It's just that the family structure is just is responsible for everything we see today.
So I'm asking all the black females out there, why did you get pregnant? Did you get pregnant to go on public assistance so that the taxpayers could pay for the child and you? Why did you get pregnant? It's so inconsiderate for your parents to raise you and then have to raise your children. That is so selfish, inconsiderate, and irresponsible.
What's happening, YouTube? Welcome to the Mr. Winslow channel. I am Mr. Winslow, your host, and today we're going to be discussing a topic of utmost importance in the African American community, and this topic deals with single motherhood in the black community.
This is Swoop, and this is Real Talk, Real Solutions. I wanted to talk about the fact that single mothers can't raise boys. If you look at most boys that are raised by single mothers, they either end up in prison or they end up dead. If you look at most of these teenage boys that are joining these gangs and shooting up the neighborhood and killing all these people, most of these boys are raised by single mothers. If you go to any prison and you interview these murderers and rapists, most of these men were raised by single mothers. It's the perfect example that single mothers can't raise boys.
I want to do another video about single moms who are strong black women. This whole I'm gonna fuse these two together, because I want to fucking get on this shit. A lot of single moms think they're, they got to raise kids along. A lot of black women think they're strong black women because they're single moms.
The single-parent household is destroying the black community, literally. Back when they had the ABC interview, remember that one? When they said 70% of black children are born in single-parent households. Do you know since that interview, it has went up by 3%. Now 73% of black children are born into single-parent households. So it's going way past epidemic proportions. It's going to almost being the norm.
This is Miss Archduchess, a black woman who's proud to be black.
I want to touch on this topic because there are several things that I'm noticing going on in the news and the media, on social media, and just in general that are pretty much letting me know, could be letting some of you know, that the black blame game, it's not working anymore. The blame game that anyone, especially you black men, are trying to put out there on black women, it's not working. And Tommy Sotomayor should be the first person to take note of this, but I don't think he's noticing yet. So anyone who is blaming someone for their problems and not doing anything about it, just know that blaming alone, it's not going to work. And everybody's not blaming, and everybody's not evil. But we do it as a group, need to think for real, like, what's it gonna be? For me, I'm running away from people who just aren't willing to take responsibility for their own lives at this point. Because there is no hope if you don't do that. That's all I have to say for now. I'm out.
Spike, if I could ask, and I want to return back to the breakdown of the family structure, and I don't want to politicize this at all because I think this is very, very critical. Republicans will say it's because of social welfare programs, which I don't agree with. Democrats will say that it's because of lack of access and opportunity. What do you think this problem stems from, and how can we fix it? Because I think it's very important.
That's a very good question. I do not have the answer.
Some other people would describe just some of the most ratchet behavior, amongst black women. They'll kind of generalize that and really talk about, they'll be talking about a certain segment of women, but they'll be talking about all black women. And then, or if you look at the way some of these kids are wilding out, they blame all black women. They say this is the fault of the black woman, and I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
The problem is we have a lot of brothers who are comfortable being subservient in the relationships. We have a lot of mother-child relationships.
Yes, say it.
Understand? So a lot of the brothers have to step up, and a lot of the sisters have to say, wait a minute, we've been wrong. All this independent woman stuff, we were wrong.
let me mention another thing, and that is parents. We need moms and dads helping raise kids. Wherever possible, the benefit of having two parents in the home, and that's not always possible. A lot of great single moms, single dads. But gosh, to tell our kids that before they have babies, they ought to think about getting married to someone, that's a great idea. Because if there's a two-parent family, the prospect of living in poverty goes down dramatically. The opportunities that the child will be able to achieve increase dramatically. So we can make changes in the way our culture works to help bring people away from violence and give them opportunity and bring them in the American system.
Well, no one can ignite a media firestorm like Ann Coulter, and her latest book, Guilty, like her other books, is very controversial, deliberately provocative. After all, it sells books, and we are happy to have with us Ann Coulter. Good morning.
Good morning.
I think we've all been discussing your book on camera.
Yes, I've heard.
So, good. You should be pleased. So, Whoopi would like to start.
I just have a couple questions, actually. In your book, you devote an entire chapter to single mothers.
Yes.
And what happens to children raised in single-parent homes. You title the chapter, Victim of a Crime, Thank a Single Mother. What is your issue with single mothers? Because I know you don't have any kids. I mean, maybe you have stepkids. I don't know. I shouldn't say that. But, and I just, before you answer, I just want to say, you said that single motherhood is like a farm team for future criminals and social outcasts. 70% of inmates in prisons come from single-parent homes. Hollywood actresses using single motherhood as a way to promote their careers. And it says, you say it's very selfish for a single mother to have a baby without a father. So I'm wondering.
Yeah, well, we now have 30 or 40 years of social science research. I mean, I'm just citing, this is, you know, dressed up numbers crunching. I'm just giving the numbers. 80% of the inmates in prisons were raised by single mothers. About 70% of the runaways of the child, juvenile delinquents, juvenile murderers, juvenile rapists, raised by single mothers. And the point is, this didn't happen by accident. The illegitimacy rate alone has gone up over 300% since 1970. And as I describe in my book, this was a specific plan by the left, attacking the nuclear family. The most famous example.
Go back to the...
What do Alicia Keys, Adrian Grenier, and President Barack Obama have in common? They were all raised by single parents. We all know an amazing single mom who works her butt off, and we don't know how she does it. That's why a bill in Wisconsin's legislature has a lot of people angry. Senator Glenn Grothman's proposal blames single parents for child abuse and neglect. It calls non-marital parenting a risk factor above alcoholism and even domestic violence. The story went national, and single moms everywhere are crying foul. There are 5 times as many single moms as dads in the U.S. Are we using gender and now motherhood as a political weapon? Senator Grothman, I want to start with you. What is this proposed law supposed to do?
Well, actually, you've completely misconstrued the proposal. All the proposal is doing is saying that a local organization who is taxpayer funded, who is trying to fight child abuse and neglect, has to try to educate the public that it's more difficult for a single parent, be it a mother or a father, to prevent child abuse and neglect to their child in that situation. For example, the National Department of Health, no conservative group, will tell you that if you have a single mother and her boyfriend, it is 20 times more likely that that child will suffer sexual abuse than an intact family of the biological mother and father. Now, if we're serious about combating abuse, those statistics have to be out there. Because I think right now we have too many people like yourself, quite frankly, who are making it appear like there's no difference in risk for children in a single-parent family.
When a country undermines traditional marriage, it cannot print up enough money to take care of all the problems that happen in our society. And we need to look no further than our welfare program and the black family in this country. Prior to the Great Society programs of the 60s, the out-of-wedlock birth among black families was under 20%. Today, that in the inner city, the out-of-wedlock birth for black families is over 80%. And one of the primary reasons for that is we have developed government programs that will pick up the tab for having children out of wedlock. The result is we exploit our women, we create a bad situation for our children, especially minorities, and we tell men that they can impregnate as many women as they want, and the government will pick up the tab. I think we need to stop that philosophy, not expand it.
Hi everyone, I'm Deborah Ruther with your entertainment report for Friday, March 4th. Mike Huckabee is slamming Natalie Portman. The Fox News talk show host and former governor of Arkansas is speaking out against Portman for glamorizing pregnancy out of wedlock. Huckabee called the Oscar-winning actress's pregnancy troubling during a televised interview, stating most single moms are very poor, uneducated, can't get a job, and if it weren't for government assistance, their kids would be starving to death and never have health care. And that's the story that we're not seeing. And it's unfortunate that we glorify and glamorize the idea of children out of wedlock.
Senator Santorum, 40% of babies born today are born to single moms. That's twice as high as reported back in 1980, and it's 11 times as high as in 1940. Studies show that children are always better off economically, most often, and emotionally, with two parents in a household. From a policy perspective, should the government be doing anything to encourage family formation?
You know, we've had this debate about the economy. We haven't talked the one issue that now increasingly even the right and the left are coming to agreement with. The biggest reason that we're seeing the hollowing out of the middle of America is the breakdown of the American family. The reality is that if you're a single parent, a child of a single parent, and you grew up in a single-parent family neighborhood, and you went to that single-parent family school, the chance of you ever reaching the top 20% of income earners is 3% in America. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know about you, but that's not good enough. And we have been too politically correct in this country because we don't want to offend anybody, to fight for the lives of our children. You want to be shocked? You read the first few chapters of Dr. Putnam's book. He talks about Port Clinton, Ohio, and growing up there in the 50s and how poor kids actually survived and did well, even though they were poor and disadvantaged. But then he goes to the towns today, and these kids are failing and failing miserably. They don't have a shot. And we won't even have the courage to have leadership at the federal level, not with legislation, but the most powerful tool the president has. The bully pulpit to encourage each and every one of you, churches and businesses and educators and community leaders, to let's have a national campaign to rebuild the American family and give every child its birthright, which is a mom and a dad who loves them. That will change this economy.
But the biggest problem with poverty in America, we don't talk about here because it's an economic discussion, and that is the breakdown of the American family. You want to look at the poverty rate among families that have a husband and wife working in them? It's 5% today. A family that's headed by one person, it's 30% today. You can't have a wealthy society if the family breaks down that basic unit of society, and that needs to be included in this economic discussion.
I've got one.
Polls opened at 7 Saturday morning in South Carolina. Democratic voters showed up early to have their say in the state's primary.
I'm a yellow dog Democrat. It doesn't matter who we had running. I was going to vote Democrat anyway. And I'm voting for Hillary because I think she will continue the President Obama's legacy.
I feel like she supports a lot of the views that I subscribe to, and I think she'd be a very good president.
Since 2010, super PAC groups have contributed to an explosion in political campaign donations. These groups are so controversial that President Barack Obama has spoken out against them. And 2016 presidential hopeful Bernie Sanders has refused to accept their money. So what are super PACs, and what are they doing to our political process? Well, the term PAC is an acronym that stands for Political Action Committee. PACs are a way for businesses, labor unions, and other special interest groups to pool donations for a specific campaign. Regular PACs, which are different from super PACs, have been donating to campaigns since 1944. But PACs have significant financial restrictions. Corporations aren't allowed to contribute, and PACs can only give up to $5,000 per candidate and $15,000 per national party. Additionally, individuals cannot contribute more than $5,000 to a PAC per year. But in 2010, a Supreme Court ruling known as Citizens United said that restricting corporate political donations was in violation of freedom of speech. Legally, it was argued that spending is speech, even if that speaker is a corporation. This led to the creation of super PACs. Essentially, super PACs are allowed to give unlimited funds from people, corporations, and unions. The only rule is that super PACs must operate independently of candidates. However, this rule is often skirted.
Every type of organization have political action committees, whether you're a union, whether you're a corporation, whether you're a trade association. Political action committees are used for access primarily. They allow employees or members of an organization to join together and have a bigger force in the political process by pooling their money and having that money be reflective in their contributions to elected officials. You can have a big effect on your type of company or type of business or type of association by how active you are politically. Most people don't understand that politics impacts them on every single level of their existence. And so it's important that you can join together and unify with fellow citizens who have your same interests at heart, whether it be hunting or fishing, whether it be corporate in terms of business goals or aspirations, whether it be an association or union membership. All of those things qualify for one voice in the political process. And one voice unified is better than many voices disjointed.
Every single American deserves to be treated equally in the eyes of the law and in the eyes of our society. It's a pretty simple proposition.
It's amazing how each generation just keeps pushing the ball forward. President Obama has pushed it forward faster than any time in the history of our community.
He's hired more gay and lesbians in his administration than any other sitting president. He repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
For we are not a nation that says, don't ask, don't tell. We are a nation that says, out of many, we are one.
All of those brave men and women who are willing to sacrifice their lives for us can now serve openly.
This is done.
Having the President of the United States declare his belief that gay couples should be allowed to marry and to use the word marry was incredibly inspiring to watch that all unfold.
It is important for me to go ahead and affirm that I think same-sex couples should be able to get married.
While the National Organization of Women celebrates 50 years of service and advocacy work this year, the organization stands to play a major role in this year's election, focusing on a good portion of their work on voter suppression. And of course, now is a staunch supporter of Hillary Clinton and is confident they can move their agenda of a feminist future. Better pay, equal pay, a woman's right to choose, and building a coalition for the future. Where do you think Trump is vulnerable from the women's activist standpoint to keep these numbers where they are? Because if these numbers stay the way they are nationally, it's going to be hard for him to win the election.
Well, let's hope he doesn't win this election. He really is a true misogynist. He is also a racist and a xenophobe. And let's be clear, African-American women are an extremely important part of the overall Obama coalition. African-American women are an extremely important part of the overall Obama coalition that put him in the White House twice, that I believe will put Hillary Clinton in the White House this year.
Look at the political base of the Democratic Party. It is single mothers who run a household. Why? Because it's so tough economically that they look to the government for help, and therefore they're going to vote. I mean, so if you want to reduce the Democratic advantage, what you want to do is build two-parent families. You eliminate that desire for government.
On behalf of everyone at American Family Association, we just want to say thank you. Thank you for taking a stand. Thank you for having the courage to not sit back and do nothing. Thank you for your support. American Family Association equips Christians to live with integrity, to stand firm, and to engage the culture. The work is far from over, and there are many challenges ahead. But one thing never changes. Nothing changes our King or our call. Nothing changes our rock. Will you stand with us?
The decline of marriage is the principal cause of child poverty in the U.S. today, as well as the cause of welfare dependence. Children who are born and raised without a father in the home are more likely to fail in school, to become involved in crime, and suffer from a host of other problems. Today, roughly 4 out of 10 children are born outside of marriage, largely to low-income and low-educated white, black, and Hispanic parents. These parents don't disfavor the institution of marriage, but they paradoxically believe that it is not important to be married before bringing children into the world. We need to give them resources to think more reasonably about the choices they're making about forming families and bringing children. That would be the single most important step we could do to begin to reduce poverty in this country.
Black folk must quit allowing people to tell them to go out and vote. Vote for what? Nobody's going to do anything for black folk in politics. Politics is controlled by money, major corporations who got the money. That's what controls politics. If you have no money, you have no say-so, you have no benefits coming. So you take your money and you control, and you take your money on the first floor, you buy every politician on the second floor. And any politician you can't buy, you rent or lease them to get what you need.
Welfare as we know it is now history.
President Clinton today signed the legislation that ends a government commitment made 61 years ago of federal aid to the nation's poorest. An historic opportunity for improvement, said the president today. A moment of shame, said some of the new law's critics, who see millions of Americans, especially children, being forced into poverty.
Welfare as we'd come to know it began in 1935 as part of President Roosevelt's Social Security Act, the Aid to Dependent Children program, to help subsidize families that had lost an income-producing father. By the 1970s, welfare had long been a lifeline for single-mother families, and a target of critics, encapsulated by Ronald Reagan's references to it in runs for the White House.
It's now common knowledge that our welfare system has itself become a poverty trap, a creator and reinforcer of dependency.
Alina Gardner, a manager at a Boston employment center, doesn't disagree.
I had my first child in 1990, and this was before the welfare reform went in. In those days, you could just be on it forever. You know, there weren't many expectations.
But you were just sitting home collecting benefits. Bad for you?
If you're idle and you're home all day and you're not taking time to invest in yourself, so then you're raising children to move into a direction that you want them to be self-sufficient, yeah, it's bad.
In order to get food stamps and health care for her children, Tamarla was forced to work as part of the state of Michigan's Welfare to Work program. This program was so successful in tossing poor people off welfare that its founder, Gerald Miller, was soon hired by the #1 firm in the country. Lockheed had found the perfect way to diversify and the perfect way to profit from people's fears, with an enemy much closer to home: poor black mothers like Tamarla Owens.
So you've got a one-parent family, and the mother's traveling 60 miles, an hour and a half away to go to work, an hour and a half to come home. How does that help a community? That's a program that ought to be stopped because it really has no merit. I think it adds more to the problem than it does to solve it.
Really?
I wish I could put 2 parents in every home and make every parent equally responsible. But I wish I could put 2 parents in every home and make every parent equally responsible. But
We have to start working on ourselves, and I really contend with not always agreement, is that we have got to stop focusing on white people. And because to focus on white people buys into the concept of their superiority. It is not what white people think about us. It's not what white people do to us. It's what we think about ourselves and what we do to ourselves. That is the key, and that's what we have to deal with. We have got to fix ourselves before we can deal with other people. So, as it relates to the black issue, the black agenda, it should not be the president's agenda. It should be our agenda. And it should be our agenda that we come to him with such compelling force, to the minister's point, with such compelling force that he has no choice but to say, hey, they made me do it. They made me do it. I had to do it.
See, that's the thing. Black people, we got this thing where we vote out of tradition and fear. But let me ask you this, man. What will Donald Trump do, and what's going to happen to black society that's not already happening under Obama?
politics, start teaching your people to be responsible. And don't vote for anybody who runs for office, green, yellow, black, if he would not deliver back to the black community, okay? Politics is a process that simply defines who's going to get what out of life. But it must be based on quid pro quo. Everybody you put in the office must deliver something very specifically back to the black community. Don't let them get off the hook by saying, well, I'll hire a black person. I don't care. Clinton will give you that same tale. I'm going to hire a black. I don't care who he puts as a secretary. That's not the issue. What is the black community going to get back in return for its vote? And that's why they keep sucking you don't ever get anything. Because we don't raise Cain. It must be quid pro quo, something for something. If we give you something, you owe us something back to the race.
On the banks of the Suez Canal, line troops battle heroically against immeasurably superior enemy forces.
When Egyptian President Sadat visited Jerusalem on the invitation of Israeli Prime Minister Begin and addressed the Knesset, or Israeli legislature. In doing so, Sadat recognized Israel's right to exist and opened the door to a lasting peace. In September 1978, U.S. President Jimmy Carter invited Sadat and Begin to join him at Camp David, where they agreed on a framework for peace between Israel and Egypt. Those agreements led to the official peace treaty signed in 1979. Sadat and Begin praised Carter for his extensive role in engineering the agreement.
So proud of both of you. God bless you.
Egypt and Israel's historic treaty, signed on March 26, 1979, sent an inspiring message of hope and peace throughout the world.
I think we should vote. I mean, but at the end of the day, you know, this two-party system is a two wings, one bird. It's still flying in the same direction. And so I think we've been fooled into thinking, Martin King said, that don't join either party. He said, use both of the parties if they support your interests. He said that if you can get the Republican Party to support your interests, then deal with the Republican Party. He said, but don't give your allegiance to either one. What happened after King died was people like Jesse Andrew Young and all those guys, under the civil rights industrial complex system, they took the civil rights movement and threw it into the Democratic Party. We've been stuck there ever since.
Black Patriarch.